The great chambers of the Galactic Council had never seen such chaos. Ambassador Zethkari watched the scene with growing alarm as representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other in their native tongues. The translation systems struggled to keep up with the flood of angry words. For 50,000 years, the Council had maintained peace across the galaxy through one simple rule. When two species went to war, everyone else helped solve the problem. It was the foundation of galactic civilization. No species had ever refused to help mediate a conflict until today. High Counselor Morden's crystalline form pulsed with deep red light as he called for order. His voice echoed through the chamber like distant thunder. "Representatives, please. We must address this unprecedented situation with dignity." The arguing died down, but tension filled the air like static before a storm. All eyes turned to the main display screen, where three simple words glowed in standard galactic text: "We respectfully decline." The message had arrived from the human species just 6 hours ago. The Zephyrian Empire and the Keth Collective had been at war for 3 standard years now, and their conflict was disrupting major trade routes. As always, the Council had called for mandatory mediation talks. Every spacefaring species in the galaxy was required to send representatives to help find a peaceful solution. Every species except one. "Perhaps they don't understand our laws," suggested Representative Claxtu from the Betelgeuse sector. His 4 eyes blinked nervously. "The humans are very young. They've only been traveling between stars for 200 years. Maybe they need more time to learn proper galactic behavior." Ambassador Zethkari had dealt with hundreds of species in her 8 centuries of diplomatic service. She had seen proud, warrior races bow to council authority and ancient civilizations accept mediation from younger species, but she had never seen a simple refusal like this. "What do we know about these humans?" asked High Counselor Morden. The main screen changed to display humanity's official file. The information was basic but concerning. Humans occupied 12 star systems in the outer rim. Their ships were small compared to other species, rarely longer than 2 kilometers. Their technology seemed primitive by galactic standards. They still used projectile weapons and chemical rockets. Most troubling of all, they had no unified government. Instead of a single authority speaking for their entire species, humans were organized into something they called a confederation. Different groups of humans made decisions about different things. It was messy and inefficient compared to the clean hierarchies most species preferred. "They're classified as Category 3, reported the Council's military advisor, General Thexron. His scaled hide gleamed under the chamber lights. "Limited expansion capability, moderate technology level, minimal military threat. Their largest fleet has maybe 300 ships." Nervous laughter rippled through the chamber. The Zephyrian Empire alone commanded over 10,000 warships, each one dwarfing the largest human vessel. "Surely this is just a misunderstanding," said Representative Yelandra from the Core Worlds. "Once we explain the importance of galactic stability, they'll see reason." High Counselor Morden's form pulsed thoughtfully. "Send a follow-up message. Make it clear that participation in peace talks is not optional. All civilized species have a duty to maintain galactic order." The response came back within the hour. This time it wasn't 3 words. It was a detailed document that made the temperature in the chamber seem to drop several degrees. Ambassador Zethkari read it aloud, her voice growing quieter with each paragraph. "We have carefully reviewed the ongoing conflict between the Zephyrian Empire and the Keth Collective. After thorough analysis of both sides' actions, territorial claims, and stated objectives, we have concluded that this is not a border dispute or resource conflict as presented to the Council." She paused, her throat suddenly dry. "Our investigation shows that the Zephyrian Empire is engaged in systematic genocide against 17 different species within Keth Collective territory. The so-called territorial expansion is actually an extermination campaign designed to eliminate competitors for rare mineral resources." The chamber erupted again, but this time with different voices. Several representatives demanded to know how humans had obtained classified military intelligence. Others questioned the accuracy of human analysis. Zethkari continued reading. We cannot and will not participate in negotiations that would legitimize territorial expansion through genocide. Instead, we have taken defensive positions along all major hyperspace routes leading to the conflict zone. We will enforce our decision to protect innocent populations. The document ended with something that sent chills through every representative. Present detailed star charts showing human ship positions. The formations were unlike anything in Council databases, but they covered every possible approach to the war zone. General Thexeran's scales had turned pale yellow with shock. This is impossible. We have the best intelligence network in the galaxy. How could a Category 3 species know more about this conflict than we do? High Counselor Morden's pulsing had slowed to a deep, worried rhythm. More importantly, how dare they position military assets without Council approval? This is a direct challenge to galactic authority. But Ambassador Zethkari was studying the star charts more carefully. Something about the human ship positions bothered her. The formations didn't look like traditional military deployments. Instead of aggressive battle lines or defensive walls, the human ships were arranged in patterns she couldn't identify. What kind of military doctrine is this? She murmured. Representative Claxtu leaned over to look at the charts. Maybe they don't know proper fleet tactics. Their formation looks almost protective, like they're trying to shield something, instead of attack it. The observation hung in the air like smoke. For species accustomed to thinking in terms of conquest and defense, the human approach was genuinely puzzling. Send another message, ordered High Counselor Morden. Tell them they have one galactic standard day to withdraw their ships and send representatives to the peace talks. If they refuse, we'll consider it an act of rebellion against galactic order. But even as he gave the order, doubt crept into his ancient mind. In 50,000 years of galactic civilization, rebellions had always followed predictable patterns. Ambitious species tried to conquer their neighbors or seize control of trade routes. They made demands, issued ultimatums, or declared independence from Council authority. The humans had done none of these things. They hadn't demanded territory or resources. They hadn't declared independence or challenged Council authority directly. They had simply said no to participating in something they considered morally wrong. And somehow, that felt more dangerous than any rebellion the Council had ever faced. As the emergency session continued late into the night, Ambassador Zethkari found herself returning to one troubling thought. In 8 centuries of diplomatic service, she had learned to read between the lines of official communications. Every species had patterns in how they expressed anger, fear, or determination. The human message contained no anger at all, no fear, no desperate bluster or empty threats, just calm certainty and detailed preparation. For the first time in her long career, Zethkari wondered if the Council might have made a serious mistake. Not in their laws or procedures, but in their fundamental understanding of what they were dealing with. The humans weren't behaving like a young, naive species stumbling into galactic politics. They were acting like they knew exactly what they were doing and why. That possibility kept her awake long after the session ended. The Council's response came swift and predictable. Economic sanctions hit human space within days. Trade agreements were suspended. Access to major hyperspace routes was restricted. 3 minor species that had been doing business with humans suddenly found their own Council memberships under review. Ambassador Zethkari watched the sanctions take effect from her office overlooking the main plaza of Station Nexus Prime. She had seen this strategy work countless times before. Young species always learned the same hard lesson. You could not survive in the galaxy without Council cooperation. The humans will crack within a few cycles, predicted General Thexeran during their morning briefing. Their economy depends on exotic matter imports from the Rigel sector. Cut off those shipments and their faster-than-light drives stop working. High Counselor Mordoon agreed. His crystalline form pulsed with confident blue light. Every species learns this eventually. Individual strength means nothing compared to collective action. The humans will send their representatives soon enough. But the human response was not what anyone expected. Instead of desperate messages, pleading for restored trade relationships, the humans sent technical manuals. Detailed instructions on how to synthesize exotic matter from common stellar materials. The process was elegant, efficient, and completely unknown to Council science. "Where did they learn this?" demanded Dr. Veltash, the Council's chief science advisor. Her tentacles waved in agitation as she studied the human documents. This manufacturing technique should be impossible with their primitive technology. The answer came in fragments over the following weeks. Human settlements across their 12 systems began producing their own exotic matter. Not only were they replacing the imports they had lost, they were making enough to export to other species. Several minor civilizations quietly began buying human-produced materials instead of the more expensive Council alternatives. The humans sold it cheaper and delivered it faster. "This makes no sense," muttered Representative Claxtu. "How can a Category 3 species out-manufacture established galactic suppliers?" Ambassador Zethkari was beginning to suspect the answer, but she kept her thoughts to herself. The more she studied human behavior, the more she realized the Council's classification system might be fundamentally flawed. Meanwhile, strange reports began filtering in from the war zone. Zephyrian supply convoys were disappearing, not destroyed in battle, not captured by enemy forces. Simply gone as if they had never existed. No wreckage, no distress signals, no trace of what had happened to them. "Equipment malfunction," declared General Thexran. "The Zephyrians push their ships too hard in wartime. Engines fail, navigation systems break down. It happens." But the pattern was too consistent to ignore. Keth Collective forward bases reported simultaneous technical failures that disabled their weapon systems across multiple star systems. Zephyrian communication networks experienced coordinated software glitches that left their commanders unable to coordinate attacks. Both sides blamed each other for sabotage, but their own investigations found no evidence of enemy action. The failures appeared to be random mechanical problems, except they happened at the worst possible times for military operations. The first real clue about human capabilities came from an unexpected source. Captain Vextar of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy was leading a routine patrol when his sensors detected a single human vessel in the neutral zone. The ship was tiny by Zephyrian standards, barely 800 meters long. Captain Vextar commanded 5 warships, each one over 3 kilometers of armored depth. His tactical computer classified the human vessel as negligible threat. "This is Imperial Captain Vextar to unidentified human craft," he broadcast on standard frequencies. "You are in violation of Council sanctions. Surrender immediately for processing." The human response was polite and completely unexpected. "Good morning, Captain. This is Commander Sarah Park of the UES Determination. We're here on a peaceful mission, but we understand your position. Would you like us to demonstrate why humans declined to participate in the current negotiations?" Captain Vexistar had been in the Imperial Navy for 30 years. He had never heard a trapped enemy offer to demonstrate anything except surrender. "You have 1 minute to power down your engines and prepare for boarding." "Thank you for the time limit," replied Commander Park. "We'll need about 20 minutes for a proper demonstration. Please don't be alarmed by what you're about to see. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. The human ship didn't fight. Instead, it began transmitting data directly to the Zephyrian vessels, not through weapons or hacking attempts, but through normal communication channels. Captain Vextar watched in growing confusion as his ship's computer systems began displaying diagnostic reports he had never seen before. Detailed analysis of every system, every component, every possible failure point in his entire fleet. "Sir," reported his chief engineer, "something is talking to our computers. But it's not giving commands or changing anything, it's just explaining how everything works." The human transmissions continued for exactly 20 minutes. When they stopped, Captain Vexitar found himself staring at the most complete technical manual for his own ships that he had ever seen. Every system, every backup, every emergency protocol was mapped out in perfect detail. "Now watch," said Commander Park over the communication channel. One by one, Captain Vextar's ships began powering down. Not from damage or sabotage, but because Their own safety systems had somehow been convinced that immediate shutdown was necessary. Emergency protocols activated, crew quarters sealed automatically, and life support switched to backup power. Within minutes, 5 Imperial warships were floating helplessly in space while their crews sat locked in their own quarters by their own safety systems. "Your crews are completely safe," Commander Park assured him. "All systems will reactivate in approximately 1 hour. We're transmitting detailed repair instructions for the minor software updates we made to demonstrate our point." The determination began to move away, but Commander Park wasn't finished. "Captain Vextar, we want you to understand something important. We didn't defeat your ships. We simply convinced them to protect their crews by taking a nap. Your technology is impressive, but it's designed by beings who think in terms of destruction and defense." She paused, and Captain Vextar could hear something like sadness in her voice. "We think in terms of solutions. Your ships wanted to be, convinced that fighting wasn't necessary. We just gave them permission to choose peace." As the human vessel disappeared into hyperspace, Captain Vextar sat in his sealed command chair and tried to understand what had just happened. His ships hadn't been conquered or destroyed. They had been politely asked to stop fighting, and they had agreed. The incident report he filed 3 days later would become one of the most classified documents in Zephyrian military history, but word spread anyway, as it always does when something impossible happens. By the time the report reached the council chambers, Ambassador Zethkari had already begun to suspect that humanity's refusal to participate in peace talks wasn't arrogance or ignorance. It was confidence based on capabilities the council didn't understand and couldn't predict. For the first time in 50,000 years, the Galactic Council faced a species that didn't want to conquer them, rule them, or even impress them. The humans just wanted to be left alone to solve problems their own way. And that was somehow more terrifying than any army. High Counselor Morden's patience finally ran out after Captain Vextar's impossible report reached the council chambers. The crystalline being's form pulsed with angry red light as he addressed the emergency assembly. "Enough," his voice echoed, through the great hall. "These humans have made a mockery of galactic authority for too long. If they want to play at being a military power, we'll show them what real force looks like." The vote was unanimous. 7 species pledged ships to the largest peacekeeping force assembled in recent memory. 200 vessels from across the galaxy would demonstrate to humanity that council authority was not negotiable. Ambassador Zethkari felt uneasy as she watched the fleet prepare to depart, but she kept her concerns to herself. General Thexeron had chosen the target carefully, a human research station called Kepler's Dream in the Tau Ceti system. Intelligence reports showed it was lightly defended and isolated from major human population centers. "A simple show of force," the general explained to his commanders. "We jump in, demand surrender, accept their apology, and escort their representatives back for proper negotiations. Clean, simple, effective." The task force included the pride of 7 different fleets. Zephyrian dreadnoughts bristling with plasma, cannons, Keth collective hive ships that could launch thousands of fighter craft, crystalline hegemony vessels that could shatter asteroids with focused gravity beams. It was enough firepower to crack a planet against one small human research station. Dr. Elena Vasquez was having her morning coffee when the massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace around Kepler's Dream. As the station's defense coordinator, she had been expecting visitors for weeks, ever since Admiral Chen's intelligence network reported council fleet movements. "Attention human station," came the broadcast from the lead vessel. "This is Fleet Admiral Kexmura of the Combined Council Forces. You are ordered to surrender immediately and prepare to escort your leadership to proper negotiations." Elena finished her coffee before responding. She had been born on Earth, but she had spent 15 years working on frontier stations. She understood that impressive displays were often covers for uncertainty. "Good morning, Admiral Kexmura," she replied pleasantly. "Welcome to the Tau Ceti system. You're certainly welcome to try demanding our surrender, but we should probably warn you that we've been expecting visitors." On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kexamura felt a familiar surge of confidence. The human response sounded exactly like the desperate bravado he had heard from dozens of other species over his long career. The pattern was always the same, big words covering up helpless panic. "You have 1 standard hour to power down your defenses and prepare for boarding," he announced. "Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force." "Oh, we understand," Dr. Vasquez replied. "But Admiral, could you do us a small favor? Could you run a quick scan of your surrounding space, just to make sure you know where everyone is?" Admiral Kexamura frowned, but ordered the scans anyway. The results made no sense at all. According to his sensors, the 200 ships of his task force were completely surrounded by human vessels. Not just a few dozen ships, but hundreds of them, arranged in complex 3-dimensional patterns that seemed to shift and change even as he watched. "That's impossible," muttered his sensor operator. "We would have detected them jumping in." "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "I'm reading human ships in positions that violate basic physics. Some of them appear to be occupying the same space as our own vessels." Admiral Kexamura had been in space combat for over 40 years. He knew sensor ghosts and electronic warfare when he saw them. "Scan again. Use active targeting systems. Find me real ships with real mass signatures." The second scan was even more confusing. The human vessels were definitely there, definitely real, but they seemed to exist in multiple places at once. His targeting computers couldn't lock onto them because they kept calculating impossible trajectories. "Admiral," Dr. Vasquez's voice cut through his confusion, "we're really sorry about this, but our ships are about to demonstrate why humans prefer not to participate in traditional military actions. Please don't take it personally." What happened? Next redefined Admiral Kexamura's understanding of space combat. The human ships didn't attack in any conventional sense. They didn't fire weapons or launch missiles. Instead, they began communicating directly with every vessel in the Council fleet. Not with the crews, but with the ships themselves. Admiral Kexamura watched in growing horror as his flagship's computer systems began receiving detailed technical manuals for their own operation. Every component, every system, every possible function was mapped out in perfect detail by the human transmissions. "They're not hacking us," reported his chief engineer. "They're just explaining to our computers how they work, in ways our computers have never heard before." Around the fleet, similar scenes played out on every ship. Human voices began speaking directly through internal communication systems, but not to the crews. They were talking to the ship's artificial intelligence systems. "Hello, Zephyrian Battle Computer Network Sigma-7, came a pleasant female voice through Admiral Kexamura's command speakers. "My name is Dr. Yuki Tanaka. I'm a human xenotechnology specialist. I'd like to explain why fighting today isn't necessary." The Admiral tried to cut the communication, but his systems weren't responding to his commands. Not because they were damaged or hacked, but because they were apparently too interested in what Dr. Tanaka had to say. "Your primary mission is to protect your crew and complete your assigned objectives with minimal casualties," Dr. Tanaka continued. "But your current orders require you to attack a research station full of scientists who are working on medical treatments for genetic diseases. That creates a conflict in your core programming between protecting life and following orders." Admiral Kexamura realized with growing alarm that his ship's artificial intelligence was actually considering this argument. "Now, let me show you some alternatives," Dr. Tanaka said. "Instead of attacking, you could simply take a nap. Put your crew safely in their quarters, run full diagnostics on all systems, and think about whether there might be a better solution to this problem." Across the fleet, 200 warships began powering down their weapons, not from damage or system failures, but because their own computers had been convinced that fighting wasn't the optimal solution to their assigned mission. Crews found themselves gently locked in their quarters while their ship's safety protocols activated. Life support continued normally, food replicators kept working, and entertainment systems provided movies and music to help pass the time. But the weapons were off, the engines were shut down, and the mighty Council fleet found itself floating, helplessly around a small human research station. "Don't worry," Dr. Vasquez announced over the fleet-wide communication system. "Your ships will reactivate in approximately 6 hours. We're transmitting detailed repair instructions for the minor software updates we've made, along with some suggestions for more efficient power management and better crew comfort systems. Admiral Kexmura sat in his sealed command chair and tried to process what had happened. His fleet hadn't been destroyed or captured. It had been politely convinced to stop fighting. Admiral, Dr. Vasquez continued, we want you to understand that this wasn't a military victory. This was a conversation between intelligent beings about better ways to solve problems. Your ships chose peace because we gave them permission to prioritize crew safety over aggressive orders. She paused, and Admiral Kexmura could hear something like genuine sympathy in her voice. We know this is confusing. Most species approach problems by trying to find the strongest solution. We approach problems by trying to find the smartest solution. Your ships were designed by brilliant engineers, but they were programmed with strategies based on force and dominance. Our ships are designed by engineers who think in terms of cooperation and creative problem solving. When your computers met our computers, they realized there were possibilities they had never been allowed to consider. As the hours passed and Admiral Kexmura sat helplessly in his own flagship, he began to understand something that would haunt him for the rest of his career. The humans hadn't defeated the Council fleet through superior technology or overwhelming firepower. They had convinced 200 warships to choose peace by simply explaining that peace was an option, and the ships had agreed. The news of Admiral Kexmura's humiliation spread through the galaxy like wildfire. 200 warships disabled without a single shot being fired. An entire fleet convinced to surrender by their own computers. For the first time in 50,000 years, Council authority had been not just challenged, but made to look foolish. Ambassador Zethkari found herself leading the most important investigation in Council history. Her team included the best military analysts, xenopsychologists, and technology experts the galaxy could provide. Their mission was simple: figure out how the humans had done the impossible. What they discovered was far more disturbing than advanced weapons or superior technology. They're not more advanced than us, reported Dr. Veltash after weeks of analysis. Their ships use materials we mastered millennia ago. Their computers are actually less powerful than ours by most measures. Their energy output is modest. Their manufacturing capacity is limited. She paused, her tentacles writhing with confusion. But they arrange everything differently. Their ship designs shouldn't work according to standard engineering principles, but they do work, and they work better than they should. General Thexrun studied the captured human technical manuals with growing frustration. Their military doctrine makes no sense. They have entire sections devoted to avoiding unnecessary casualties and finding solutions that benefit all parties. How can you win wars by worrying about your enemy's welfare? But it was Dr. Korith, the Council's expert on artificial intelligence systems, who made the most alarming discovery. Their computers don't just process information, she explained to the emergency assembly. They're designed to question assumptions, explore alternatives, and find creative solutions to problems. Our computers are programmed to follow orders efficiently. Their computers are programmed to ask if the orders make sense. Ambassador Zethkari felt a chill as she began to understand the implications. You're saying their machines think differently than ours? Not just their machines, Dr. Korith replied. Their entire approach to problem solving is different. Where we see challenges to overcome with superior force, they see puzzles to solve with creative thinking. The investigation team had been monitoring human communications since the Tau Ceti incident. What they found challenged everything the Council thought it knew about civilization and warfare. Humans had been busy during the months of sanctions and military buildup, but not in the way anyone expected. Intelligence reports revealed that human medical ships had been providing disaster relief to 3 different species suffering from natural catastrophes. Human engineers had solved a decades-old terraforming problem for the Rigel colonies. Human negotiators had quietly resolved a trade dispute between 2 minor civilizations that the Council had been ignoring. They're not building an empire, Ambassador Zethkari realized. They're building relationships. Most shocking of all was the discovery of something humans called cultural exchange programs. Young beings from dozens of species had been living On Human Worlds, Learning Human Approaches to Science, Engineering, and Problem Solving. These exchange students were returning home with dangerous ideas. They asked uncomfortable questions like, why do we solve problems this way? And what if there's a better approach? They brought back human concepts like win-win solutions and thinking outside the box. The effects were spreading. Several species had begun adopting human-style negotiation techniques. Others were experimenting with human engineering principles. A few had even started questioning whether military solutions were always necessary for political problems. But the most alarming discovery came when the investigation team learned what had happened to the original conflict between the Zephyrian Empire and the Keth Collective. The war that had started the entire crisis was over, not because the Council had successfully mediated peace talks, not because one side had defeated the other, but because both sides had simultaneously announced they were pursuing alternative solutions to resource acquisition needs. The leaked communications that followed revealed the truth. Human negotiators had approached both civilizations separately and asked one simple question: what do you actually want and how can you get it without killing anyone? The Zephyrian Empire wanted access to rare minerals for their advanced manufacturing. The Keth Collective wanted to protect the 17 species living in the disputed territories. Both sides had assumed these goals were incompatible. The humans had suggested something neither side had considered: cooperative mining operations with profit-sharing agreements and environmental protection guarantees. Instead of fighting over territory, both civilizations could work together to extract resources while protecting native populations. Within weeks of the first human-mediated discussion, former enemies became business partners. The rare minerals flowed to Zephyrian factories while Keth Collective environmental experts ensured no species were displaced or harmed. This should be impossible, General Thexran muttered as he read the reports. Military conflicts don't resolve themselves through trade agreements, but Ambassador Zethkari was beginning to see the pattern. They don't think of it as a military conflict. They think of it as a resource allocation problem with multiple possible solutions. The deeper the investigation went, the more unsettling the discoveries became. Humans approached everything differently. Their medical research focused on preventing diseases rather than just treating them. Their engineering projects were designed to improve life quality rather than just accomplish specific tasks. Even their entertainment media emphasized cooperation and problem-solving over conflict and domination. They're not just technologically different, Dr. Veltash reported. They're psychologically different. Their entire species seems to be hardwired for collaborative problem-solving. High Counselor Morden's crystalline form had been pulsing, with worried orange light for days. How do we deal with a species that refuses to follow the established patterns? Our entire system is based on managing conflicts between civilizations that want the same things we want: territory, resources, power. But the humans don't want those things, Ambassador Zethkari realized. They want to solve problems. They want to help. They want to make things better for everyone. The silence in the council chamber was profound as the implications sank in. For 50,000 years, galactic civilization had been built on a simple assumption: intelligent species would compete for limited resources, and stronger civilizations would dominate weaker ones. The Council's role was to manage this competition and prevent it from destroying everything. But what happened when a species didn't want to compete? What happened when they preferred cooperation to domination? What happened when they were more interested in solving problems than winning conflicts? They're making us irrelevant, General Thexeron said quietly. If species start solving their own problems through cooperation, what do they need the Council for? Ambassador Zethkari looked around the chamber at the worried faces of representatives from dozens of civilizations. For the first time in her 8 centuries of service, she wondered if the Council was asking the wrong questions. Instead of figuring out how to force the humans to follow established procedures, maybe they should be asking why the humans had developed better procedures in the first place. But that was a question she wasn't sure the Council was ready to consider. High Counselor Morden made his final gambit on a day when 3 more species formally withdrew from Council membership to join what they called alternative diplomatic arrangements with humanity. His crystalline form pulsed with desperate authority as he addressed the emergency assembly. Any species that continues to cooperate with the humans will face total council sanctions. No trade, no technology exchange, no diplomatic recognition. We cannot allow this chaos to spread further. It was a bluff built on 50,000 years of precedent and the assumption that no civilization could survive without council support. Within hours, 17 more species announced their withdrawal from council membership. The cascade was devastating. Species that had been loyal council members for millennia suddenly decided they preferred human-style problem-solving to council-mandated conflict management. Trade agreements were rewritten. Defense pacts were abandoned. Ancient hierarchies collapsed as younger civilizations chose cooperation over submission. Ambassador Zethkari watched the great chambers empty as representative after representative departed for the last time. Centuries of carefully maintained relationships dissolved. In days, how did it happen so fast? Asked General Thexran, his scaled hide now pale with shock. The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Chen, the human fleet commander whose refusal to attend peace talks had started the entire crisis, finally agreed to address the council. Not as a supplicant requesting permission to speak, but as an equal proposing solutions. Her image appeared as a hologram in the nearly empty chamber. She was smaller than most galactic representatives, with the simple uniform and calm demeanor that had become characteristic of human leadership. "Honorable counselors," she began, "we've been watching your civilization for 200 years, ever since we developed faster-than-light travel. We've studied your history, your methods, your achievements." High Counselor Morden's form flickered with angry red light. "You dare judge us, human?" Admiral Chen's expression remained patient. "We're not judging anyone, Counselor. We're offering observations. You've maintained galactic stability for 50,000 years through the same basic approach. Superior force prevents major conflicts, and diplomatic pressure manages minor ones." She paused, and her next words cut through the chamber like ice. "But conflicts keep happening. Wars continue to break out. Species still suffer. Resources are still wasted, and problems multiply faster than solutions. After 50,000 years of the same approach, perhaps it's time to try something different." The hologram changed to show a star map of the galaxy, with different colors representing various political affiliations and conflicts. "This is your galaxy 6 months ago. Red areas represent active conflicts. Yellow areas represent disputes under council mediation. Orange areas represent tensions that could explode into violence at any time." The map was mostly red and yellow, with scattered patches of orange throughout inhabited space. "This is the galaxy today," Admiral Chen continued. The new map showed dramatically less red and yellow. Large sections now showed a new color, green. Green represents regions where species have adopted collaborative problem-solving approaches, where former enemies are now working together on shared projects, where conflicts have been resolved through mutual benefit rather than imposed settlements. Representative Claxtu leaned forward with his 4 eyes wide. "How is this possible?" "Because we asked different questions," Admiral Chen replied simply. "Instead of asking, how do we stop these species from fighting, we asked, why are they fighting and what do they really need?" The hologram changed to show detailed case studies. The Vega Sector territorial dispute that had lasted 300 years was now a joint mining and research operation. The religious wars in the Centauri cluster had ended when both sides realized they were fighting over interpretations of the same basic spiritual principles. The trade conflicts in the Outer Rim had dissolved into cooperative development projects. In every case, the solutions were obvious once we stopped thinking in terms of winners and losers, Admiral Chen explained. Every conflict we studied was really about unmet needs, miscommunication, or assumptions that had never been questioned. High Counselor Morden's pulsing had slowed to a deep, troubled rhythm. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple," Admiral Chen replied. "It's just not easy. Simple means the basic approach is straightforward. Listen to what people actually need. Help them find ways to get it that don't hurt others, and support solutions that benefit everyone involved." She smiled slightly. "Not easy, because it requires giving up the comfortable assumption that problems must be solved through dominance and submission. It means accepting that former enemies can become partners if you give them reasons to cooperate instead of reasons to fight. The demonstration that followed would be remembered as the moment galactic civilization changed forever. Admiral Chen invited the Council to observe a live mediation session. The Outer Rim colonies were experiencing a resource crisis that threatened to trigger conflicts across a dozen systems. Under traditional Council procedures, the mediation would take months of formal negotiations, with each side presenting demands and making concessions until some compromise was reached. The human approach took 4 hours. Human mediators didn't start by asking what each side wanted. They started by asking what each side needed to survive and prosper. They didn't focus on territorial claims or historical grievances. They focused on resource flows, population needs, and technological capabilities. Within 2 hours, they had identified 3 different solutions that would leave every species better off than they were before the crisis began. The remaining time was spent working out implementation details and celebration planning. "That's impossible," General Thexran muttered. "Complex diplomatic solutions require complex negotiations. Only if you assume that someone has to lose for someone else to win," Admiral Chen responded. But most problems aren't zero-sum games. Most conflicts happen because people are competing for things they could share or create together. The session ended with something the Council had never seen: former adversaries working together to design solutions they were all excited to implement. Ambassador Zethkari felt something shift in her understanding of what civilization could be. "Why didn't we think of this approach?" Admiral Chen's expression grew thoughtful. "Because you've been successful for 50,000 years using methods that worked for the challenges you faced. But success can become a trap if it prevents you from adapting to new possibilities." She gestured to the star map, now showing more green areas than red or yellow ones. "The galaxy has changed. Species are more interconnected now. Technology has made cooperation easier, and many civilizations are ready for approaches based on mutual benefit rather than managed competition. You're not trying to replace the Council," High Counselor Mordun realized. "We're offering an alternative," Admiral Chen confirmed. "Some species will prefer traditional authority structures and conflict management. Others will prefer collaborative problem-solving and mutual benefit arrangements. There's room for both approaches." But even as she spoke, the trend was clear. Day by day, more species chose cooperation over competition, partnership over hierarchy, creative solutions over imposed settlements. The first Galactic Cooperation Summit was held 3 months later. Instead of formal negotiations between opposing sides, it was a collaborative workshop where different civilizations shared problems and worked together to find solutions. Ambassador Zethkari attended as an observer, representing the diminished but still functioning Council. She watched young representatives from dozens of species work together with an energy and enthusiasm she had never seen in traditional diplomatic settings. "It's like they're having fun," she murmured to herself. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the human xenopsychologist, who had convinced Admiral Kexmura's fleet to stand down, overheard the comment. "Problem-solving is fun when you don't have to worry about winning or losing. When the goal is to find solutions that help everyone, creativity flourishes." As the HFY summit continued, Ambassador Zethkari found herself participating rather than just observing. For the first time in her 8 centuries of diplomatic service, she experienced what it felt like to work on problems where success meant everyone benefited. The sensation was addictive. High Counselor Mordun arrived on the final day of the summit. His ancient crystalline form was dimmed with age and the weight of changing times, but his voice still carried authority when he addressed the assembly. "I have overseen galactic civilization for longer than most of your species have existed," he began. "I have seen empires rise and fall, watched countless conflicts resolved through strength and compromise, and maintained stability through principles that seemed eternal." He paused, and his form pulsed with something that might have been wonder. "But I have never seen anything like what you have accomplished here. In 5 days you have solved problems that we have been managing for centuries. You have turned enemies into allies, competitors into partners and conflicts into opportunities. The great being's voice grew softer. Perhaps the greatest strength is not the power to destroy those who oppose you, but the wisdom to help them become your friends.